on some of the statistics here, because give us a sense of just how little things have changed.
I think you look at these numbers year over year, and we see companies releasing their numbers year over year, and you see changes of 1% here or there, and companies are really trying to slice and dice things in a way that makes them look good, so they often will now start to just show percentages of the new hires that they've made in the last year, like what percentage of them were women. Because the truth is, if you're a company as large as, say, Alphabet, 60,000 employees, if you could hire women and underrepresented minorities all day long, and you wouldn't see a ton of change in the percentages of the company. So it is, I think, been interesting to see how companies react to showing the same or very similar statistics year after year.
Still more work to do. Rebecca, can you tell us some of the inside facts of what they are trying to do, perhaps more innovative ways of bringing in ethnic minorities, more females, and actually holding on to that talent among the companies you've spoken to?
So something that was pretty in vogue in the past few years has been this unconscious bias training. So it's training where people will come in and tell you how we're all biased in the workplace and it's not your fault, but we all have these biases. And that was supposed to help these companies solve these problems. But it turns out that unconscious bias training, especially on its own, doesn't really work. It makes people feel very on the defensive, even though it's not someone saying like, oh no, you're a bad person. But it does make people feel like they're called out. And then also research has shown that bringing up biases in the workplace kind of makes people accept them. So that training, which a lot of companies have put a lot of money in, aren't working. But there are some things, more technological things that these companies are hoping will work. So new hiring techniques or recruiting techniques that they hope to get rid of some of the biases that happen when people are picking other people to work at their companies.
And perhaps target a little bit more. I was listening to a podcast, for example, just saying maybe change the language, and that indeed can help in many ways to bring women on board, for example. What about, Ellen, the solutions that you've seen work, and which companies are sort of stand out here in Silicon Valley that are really trying to make inroads and seem to be making it work?
Well, seeming to make it work is hard, but there are definitely companies that are public about and vocal about what they've been trying to do. So, last year or maybe 2 years ago, we had Facebook put out videos of what was kind of their unconscious bias training modules. They had these videos that they were really encouraging other companies to watch them and try to figure out how they could implement them at their own companies. And echoing what Rebecca was saying, it is interesting to see how many companies really want to just check the box of like, oh yeah, we did unconscious bias training. Like, we have this new software that we use in our hiring process that's supposed to eliminate bias, and yet it's really hard to know whether they actually work. And I think many companies jump in to wanting to implement these without actually testing, what the effects might be.
We're just looking at those previous statistics, just showing how few Black and Latinos do work, particularly in technology. Rebecca, is there any area of hope and optimism where you talk to some of the areas, the technology-focused areas of new hirings and the way in which it could be working? Are there any standouts that you've heard going through your podcast that you think there's opportunity to scale?
Well, like I mentioned, hiring is a big place where these companies, I think, are hoping to move the needle. As Ellen mentioned, it's hard to know what exactly works, but there are companies, for example, it starts at the very beginning of the process. So companies that will write jobs listings that will appeal to more diverse candidates. They found that certain words, for example, might appeal to men over women or certain races over others. And then they'll have software that reads resumes so that the person reading the resumes, their bias doesn't come in. And then you go down from there. So I think the new move, if you're really trying to fix this, is kind of a holistic approach that's from hiring until throughout the entire employee life cycle at the company.